I see we have Amy here from and Zion. Amy, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. So excited to get to connect with you today. Will you tell us a little bit about your role at Zion and Zion and how we work together with our teams here at Telium?
Sure, I am the VP of Data and Analytics here. Zion and Zion's kind of a unique agency. So we are a full service agency. We have paid media teams, a web development team, creative teams. We also do marketing automation and UX. But what's different about us as a partner is across all of our teams, we have subject matter experts who are also trained in Telium. So our paid media team, our UX team, and our marketing automation team are also all trained as Telium subject matter experts. So they've gone through certification, they've passed their certifications, and they regularly work in Telium. So what's great about that is when you engage with us, we'll pull in our paid media team. So when we're setting up your implementation, or if you're working with us as an agency partner, we don't need to be your agency of record or doing your, marketing automation, your Marketo work, or your Facebook work. We'll actually pull in those subject matter experts if we need to set up Facebook CAPI or something. And then we'll collaborate with your agency of record and we'll pull those people in to actually help you work better with those tools. So with the instance of Facebook CAPI, usually we'll pull in someone that knows Facebook really well in platform so that they can sit down with your agency and say, you know what, these audiences don't scale well in Facebook. You need to think about things a little bit different with first party data. So you're going to want to do something like this. So when you're working in Facebook, you might use these types of audiences. And when you're working inside of Telium with your own first party data, this is how we would convert and use that type of audience inside of Telium, inside of CDP. We would actually pivot and do it this way. So we want to look broader, or we want to look at more engagement. So it's really nice to have those subject matter experts that work day to day inside a platform, as well as work day to day inside of Telium, because not only can they problem solve, if data is not moving exactly as how you would expect, but they also can provide strategy help and really help kind of get those partners that are a little hesitant about maybe using something like Telium because they're very comfortable with their platforms. They can go, okay, here's the real benefit. Here's where you'll see better ROI. Here's where you'd get excited about moving data back and forth. So they can help with adoption with those agency partners as well.
Fantastic. That's a very valuable service. And partnering with a partner like Zion is really how our customers can take their Telium instance to the next level. Thank you for walking us through that. Amy, we're on the Healthcare Digital Velocity event today. Healthcare includes a wide variety of types of businesses, companies, brands. When we talk about healthcare, what does that mean? What all does that encompass that you're paying attention to?
Healthcare can be a lot of things. So I've worked with traditional healthcare, like hospitals, but obviously it can be insurance. It can be, your local pharmacy. One of the clients that I also work with that nobody ever thinks about as being healthcare is Smile Direct Club. So, your mail to order orthodontia, you wouldn't think of that as being healthcare or even needing to be HIPAA compliant as well. So that's one of the ones that I think that people don't think of as traditional healthcare that is. So there's a lot of different agencies out there. There's also apps that are providing health services that you don't traditionally think of as healthcare, something that they're providing, maybe meditation, those types of things that often when they're engaging with you and providing health services, they're healthcare.
Absolutely. We are very thankful for orthodontia.
Yeah. Yeah, those have the health services that popped up during COVID. I think a lot of people didn't realize that they were really healthcare. A lot of them popped up that were new. Now, of course, Smile Direct Club has existed for a number of years, but there's been a lot of non-traditional healthcare that popped up in the last 2 years.
So talk to us more about that. The pandemic and healthcare obviously are hand in hand. Beyond the health implications, human health, what are some of the new trends that emerged as you were alluding to there? How did the way that we as consumers interacting with healthcare companies change?
So definitely digital wellness, we're seeing it across everything. Digital wellness well-being has become a huge trend. But also, I think we've all experienced during COVID a virtual visit. So for my traditional healthcare clients, we saw this huge pivot to everybody needed some sort of virtual visit platform in the last 2 years. And not only did they need these virtual visit platforms, they needed a way to measure that type of engagement. And that's where platforms like Telium and being able to understand those engagements became very important. And not only that, but being able to understand them, measure them in a HIPAA compliant manner became even more important, because you now are taking what typically is an in-person experience. You've moved it completely to the web. It's something that's happening virtually. It becomes something that you can measure, that you can see how many people are showing up to these virtual visits. Typically, you would have that in a database. So you would know that, people are booking them, they're showing up, they're engaging online. This was another touch point that became a 100% digital touch point for them. So having these platforms that are HIPAA compliant, where you can see those touch points and potentially gather data, was really, really valuable. Obviously, you're not going to go into any of the actual, appointments, but being able to see how many people are in waiting rooms. It becomes almost like a call center experience. How many people are waiting? How many people are, searching for virtual visit appointments? What's the queue look like in them? Those types of things became very important very quickly. Plus, I saw this rapid adoption of how quickly can we get our virtual visits up, because there was fewer and fewer actual in-person visits.
I know I had a text exchange with one of my physicians here last year. I just knew sinus infection, and it was so nice to jump into a chat, text with him. He sent my prescription in, went and picked it up. And I was like, man, that was nice. That was so easy.
Yeah, stuff that where it's like you've had it before. You're like, I never really needed to go into the doctor for this. It's the same thing. I get allergies, sinus infections, and I'm like, it was an inconvenience to have to go to the doctor and to have to say, look, I have a sinus infection. I've had this a million times. Please just send me an antibiotic. Yeah, it's to be able to tell your doctor, and they know you have a history of it, to just take care of it for you. They've now turned patient experience into customer experience. It's really nice that something that was, horrible that we've all experienced over the last 2 years has affected digital transformation across the entire healthcare space. Healthcare has always been really advanced as far as customer experience goes. They started adopting this much sooner than a lot of other industries. They were already ahead of the curve thinking about how to improve customer experience, because they realized that they were competing with every other healthcare facility. People were not loyal to their healthcare systems. Healthcare is very expensive. And it was really soon that, like, very quick, that people realized, I'm just going to jump to where it's least expensive. People were shopping around for healthcare far before the pandemic. So there had to be a reason, there had to be something that would make you loyal to a certain system or loyal to a certain doctor. So they started paying attention to that a long time ago. And I think just the virtual visit concepts has now even just taken it further.
So when we think about business objectives, and you mentioned loyalty being a huge challenge for healthcare companies, what are some of those shifts in business objectives that you're seeing? I know we've talked about that kind of maturity spectrum. Depending on where you are in your digital transformation, you may be looking to go more after new customer acquisition. You may be looking to maintain that customer base you have and increase their loyalty. What are some of those themes that you're seeing in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, definitely customer acquisition and maintaining their customers is very important, because obviously things like, just, I'm trying to think of what, like urgent care is not very profitable for the healthcare industry. Those types of appointments are not profitable. It's convenient for us to go in for urgent care appointments, but really they want long-term patients. They want long-term customers. And being able to nurture a customer just like any other industry is very, very valuable. And then that's where years ago, I worked for Dell Services long before CDPs were, really CDPs taking off. I know that Telium at that point even actually had started developing Audience Stream, but it hadn't really taken off as a boxed product. And I was at that point working with a number of different healthcare systems, which we were building master data management CDPs and calling them customer 360s. And healthcare systems were probably our biggest customer. And they cared about the customer 360 at that point, pulling all the data together and understanding who their customer was. Because if they could figure out who a customer is, what they knew about their customer, and really how to understand them better, how to cater to them, and then how to have those healthcare advocates, which were dedicated to their different types of patients, and really treat a patient to make sure long term, how do we have preventative healthcare? How do we make sure that we're catering to patients to keep them out of the hospital if they've just had surgery? We don't want to have reoccurrences, those types of things. And if they do have long-term conditions, that we make sure that we're making sure that they're maintaining their medication, those types of things. So they wanted to have these intelligent platforms that would alert them and have healthcare managers that were keeping up with their patients, but that it wasn't just something that was, you had to log into a CRM every day and look at every single patient. They wanted an alerting system. Essentially, they wanted a CDP, but they had someone building them custom CDPs for everything. And then, of course, I moved on to agency space and discovered that there was actually this boxed platform that said, okay, you can bring in these data sources, connected, build business rules, and I'll figure out all of that for you. And it's HIPAA compliant, and it connects to almost anything. And that was a big realization that it was like, oh, the stuff that we were doing really manually and we had to take like 3 years to build, somebody already connected that to the healthcare space and they've tailored it really well to it. And healthcare, like I said, has cared about this for a very long time because they do actually want to deliver the best thing to their customers, because they realize if they care about loyalty, their customers are theirs long term. And that shift happened to them, that patients truly are customers and you deliver to customers. Acquisition's important as well, but if you acquire a customer and you don't treat them well, you have to acquire more customers.
Right. So with the healthcare industry really leaning toward the mature end of that spectrum, we know that those who are more digitally mature are leaning into some of the new, most innovative trends and themes. Where are you seeing the most exciting things happening in healthcare? Who's testing, what's new up and coming that we should be paying attention to?
So some of the coolest things that I've seen, everybody's been, apps that are intelligent. I've seen, apps where you go into a hospital and they can help you lead you around, because everybody's gone into a hospital and you have no idea where you are and they're all confusing. You have to ask someone, you can't find your way around. So having that ability that it's, you can find yourself around and it leads you through just like Waze would in any sort of hospital. So having very intelligent app like experiences. I've seen hospitals then, of course, that where they're installing beacons in the hospitals for the apps, which is great. That they're actually more mature than some retail spaces that I've seen, which is great. I've seen which hospitals for a very long time. I've seen healthcare and a lot of industries talk about predictive and talk about AI, and they do it a lot in obviously the academic space, but I've seen many hospital systems actually try to attain this. We hear industries talking about AI, and I've seen healthcare spaces, especially hospital systems that are very mature, take data from their CDPs, their data warehouses, and actually try to model out all of that data. So they are trying to understand their customers very well, which is great. And then from customer experience standpoints, marketing, they are marketing much more like the consumer space versus what you would expect from a hospital system. A lot of times when people think about healthcare and hospitals and doctors, you would think that it is, cold and sterile, and it's not. I've seen them using, you go into hospitals and they're using finger identification versus actually just asking you, because that's a lot of times you walk into your hospital and it's an open room or your doctor's office and they ask you for your name and your birth date, and it's like, wait, this is, they're asking me for all of my personal information and everybody can hear it. And I've worked with hospital systems where they've set up eye identification or fingerprint identification, and it's like, okay, now they've really taken HIPAA seriously.
Right.
They're making sure that none of your information is leaking in any capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know we've joked about there are things that most people think are hot right now, but you're very passionate about HIPAA, privacy and security, compliance with the ever evolving landscape of privacy regulations. So talk to us about what that looks like in healthcare today.
Yeah, so it's funny. I always, whenever I join a lot of sales calls with Telium, and whenever we want to talk about use cases, it's the use cases that most, which are the crawl, walk, run use case of a lot of CDP clients, is retargeting and suppression, which those ones are really, really high value use cases. And then I'll tell all my clients, I'm like, the best use case is like GDPR and CCPA compliance. And they're like, not interesting. And the funny thing is, you can save so much money as an organization with your compliance use cases, but it's never the sexy use case. Nobody wants that use case. Whereas if we were to go to your compliance or your legal team, they'd be like, oh, buy that product. We need that. And if you go to a healthcare team, if you're working with someone from the IT side or the technical side, definitely compliance as an organizational tool. HIPAA, there are 18 identifiers that you're technically not supposed to collect, and some of them are the most surprising identifiers: URL, IP address. And anyone who's worked in analytics, which a lot of the people on this call have, know URL is the foundation of everything that we do. And if you have a very strict healthcare organization, they actually are going to tell you, you should not be collecting URL and you should not be sending it anywhere. And IP address, they're going to say, they might tell you that you can pseudo-anonymize that, or, get rid of the last octet. Some of them will be less strict than others. And they'll be like, okay, URL is fine as long as you get rid of things. Like if you have a landing page where it has pregnancy in it, you need to get rid of that. You need to anonymize that. Or you can move towards having numerical or alphanumeric IDs for those URLs. But I've had healthcare organizations that I work with that they're like, no, you cannot send URL. You cannot send IP address. And a tool like Telium and EventStream makes it much easier to determine what data goes where and how do you determine what you can send where. And building out that enterprise data strategy becomes a lot easier. And then also determining, okay, how do I remain HIPAA compliant, but then also send this data to a tool like Google Analytics, where there's foundations that are required to actually be able to analyze this data. So having the right tool in place that can be HIPAA compliant, like Telium can, where they will sign a business associates agreement, a BAA, is very important. I love talking about compliance with teams that actually understand compliance and have, those requirements for compliance in hand. And then sometimes you'll talk to healthcare organizations and they'll be like, yeah, we know we need to be compliant, but this is very important to us. And then having that ability to really understand between those two things and say, you know what, if you know that you need to be compliant, here's how I can help you be compliant. And this tool is really, really going to enable this. And, if you go to your compliance team or your legal team and say, I need this, this will enable it. It's completely going to validate the cost of it. Nobody is going to say no to it.
Love it. I love your passion for compliance. So Another key theme that Heidi touched on opening us up this morning is personalization and how important personalized experiences are in healthcare. There are a lot of different ways that healthcare companies can personalize experiences with their audiences. What are some of those ways that stand out to you as something that we should be looking at, a beacon in the industry doing a great job?
So this is one of those ones that it becomes touchy because obviously you can't personalize too much. A lot of the organizations I have seen, they separate the experiences. So you have like the marketing side experience and the patient side experience. Patient side, you can't personalize as much, but marketing side, you can personalize a ton. And with that, based on, you know, your types of interests, what you are doing, personalization can be very savvy and you can help lure people in, especially when you're on the lead generation side. Personalization can be very helpful. So, and then within apps as well. And I've seen so many more healthcare organizations adopt the app and then use the app as a tool. It used to be that you would have an app and all the app would do is maybe help you book your appointments, understand what lab tests, those types of things. But now they're actually adding additional content to it. So utilizing that additional content space for personalization is really important.
Absolutely. And thinking about real time, that's another component that a lot of our customers pay a lot of attention to. And, you know, we like in marketing, we like to say we're as real time as our customers want to be, as we're ready to move with them as fast as they want to move. How are you seeing real time data transfer, collection, activation play out in healthcare?
So one of the biggest things that I saw with real time, so you have things like people canceling appointments. There may be a lot of automated marketing that's already in place. You know, you have things like marketing pushes, push notifications, emails that you might be sending out that in the past, that was all done through a marketing automation tool. If you use Tealium as that hub in the center, which is really what it's designed to do, a lot of different healthcare organizations don't necessarily have these centralized tools. Most of them now that I've seen, you know, they're acquiring a lot of different systems. Healthcare organizations, especially when you're looking at hospital systems and doctors' offices, they may have different CRMs across them. So having Tealium as that hub in the middle, someone cancels an appointment, they might still get the notification that, hey, you need to show up for your appointment today. And it's like, I just canceled that. Why are you notifying me? Real time becomes very important there. And what you do then is Tealium's going to say, all right, Dynamics or Marketo or whatever tool that you're using, I want you to suppress that notification, or Twilio, whatever I'm using for my push notification, cancel that. You don't need to send it. They just canceled their appointments. One of the most sensitive type use cases that I talked about was someone, and we were thinking about this, and it was a use case that we had with a privacy compliance team, and they were really sensitive to this. Think about a mom who maybe just had a miscarriage, and you've been sending her personalization and a lot of different nurture campaigns about where she is within her pregnancy journey. And you have different automations, and it's like, okay, well, we're just about to send her an email about entering into her second trimester. We can now all of a sudden automatically push that out because we know what happened through the CRM. You can now be very sensitive from a customer experience perspective and stop that from happening. And that was one of, with a client that I worked with, they were like, this is something that from a client compliance perspective and a sensitivity perspective, they were like, yeah, we can sign off on that, because even though it bridges a compliance, they're like, yes, this provides customer experience and it's the kind of thing our customers want.
So important. That's a great example.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, we have questions streaming in for you. So let's try to answer as many of these as we can. What should healthcare brands be focusing on right now to be a leader in the industry?
Definitely, I think they need to be continuing down their digital transformation space. They have done such a good job thinking about, okay, how do we treat patients like customers For the ones that have not, jumped into this space, focus on trying to join that data together. There are certainly some hospitals, some local doctors' offices that haven't figured out, how do I bring my data together? How do I make sure that if you are canceling appointments, that you aren't going to get those notifications over and over again? So bring that siloed data together, jump into the CDP space. The larger ones have. Smaller, regional doctors' offices aren't doing that. Even I would say like dental offices are not doing that. They're very focused on HIPAA compliance, but they are not focused as much on customer experience. So being able to bring siloed data systems together and then be able to say, yes, I understand, and this is how I reach out to you about these different experiences.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Another question. What is on the horizon for healthcare experiences in 23 and 24? What should companies be getting ahead of now?
So something, and this is actually what I'm seeing. So adoption, we obviously all of us have health insurance from some sort of family plan, insurance plan, employer plan. I'm seeing a lot better adoption and information that you're getting probably from your insurance plan, from your employer, things like that. So trying to get people to be more proactive with actually using their insurance and the benefits that are available to them. So I think probably as we're moving out of the pandemic, you're going to see a lot more information about actually going to your doctor, doing more preventative, and then also from your insurance company reminding you to, hey, you should go get a physical because you probably haven't gotten one in 2 years, those types of things. So I think we're going to get a lot more engagement type. It's not just get a vaccine type engagement that we've gotten over the last 2 years. It's going to be the type of engagement that maybe some of these organizations, I would imagine, have ramped up on their digital maturity over the last 2 years. I would anticipate that we're going to see a ton of, here's how you take advantage of your employer health benefits that you had no idea existed, mental health benefits, those types of things. And are you actually utilizing your health insurance to the best of your advantage?
Yeah, it's great to get all the value that we're paying into and maximizing that. I think that's
Yeah.
okay. Another question for you. This is a good one. Could you please highlight some trending top CDP use cases outside of retargeting and suppression, which Telium partners should focus on?
So top use cases, I think at this point, so nurturing is always the biggest use case that I see. So we always kick off with like a crawl, walk, run from my perspective. I'm always thinking, okay, how do we find the biggest value when I start an engagement with a customer, which targeting, suppression, and then understanding the value of those customers. So lifetime value is usually the next one after that. And regardless of what industry you're in, lifetime value is going to be what you're thinking about. Starting to kind of profile out your personas that you have in whatever industry you're in. Think about it from that perspective. What do my customers look like? Whether you're in a lead generation space, you're in e-commerce, or you're in healthcare, you're going to want to start thinking about, who are these customers? What do their segments look like? Figure out how to calculate lifetime value, because you can continue to increment that regardless of where you are. Think about those engagement segments of how they engage on your site. So bucketing them into different types of engagement. Are they looking at certain types of content on your site? So you can figure out their affinity and segment off of that. So if you have a blog on your site, do they have interest in certain types of blog content? That's very important. A lot of times offline data, if you have a data warehouse, if you have a CRM, being able to pull that data in from your CRM, not only pull it in, but push it back out. I love pulling data in from, if you have a Salesforce customer, having that ability to pull the data in from Salesforce and pushing it back out. Telium's great with being able to push data back out into Salesforce. And people will be like, why do I want to push data back into Salesforce? Understanding what segments users are interacting with on your website and then being able to see that data in Salesforce is always very important. If you have something like click to call on your website with things like Invoca, ClickRail, if you can see that data on your website, adding that ClickRail data or Invoca data and pushing that back into a tool like Salesforce where you can see that engagement data, having that in real time so that you can see somebody was engaging. This is what they were clicking through. This is what was happening. Did they have any sort of friction on the website prior to them calling, and then being able to push that back into Salesforce, pushing it into some sort of call center type tool, whatever you have in place, so you can see some sort of engagement before it triggers some sort of call is always nice to have. Other types of use cases that are really important. Trying to think of what we've done recently with healthcare. I love seeing mobile app data. My favorite ones for mobile apps, if you can see things when they're in real-time engagement. I love beacons. Not a lot of people have beacons in place, but when you can actually trigger mobile app and be able to push notifications, those types of things, pop-up stores with beacons. Telium is very, very good at this. When you have an app, so beyond just doing geofencing, which, anything can be done with that, but if you actually have a beacon in place, this is great for entertainment different types of customers. If you have a beacon and you can be able to say, hey, there's this pop-up store right here that we have in place and you're approaching it. We want you to be able to actually engage. We know that you might have a high level of interest. Different types of entertainment type customers being able to say, you know what, we know that you're approaching one of our sponsors. You might be interested in this. Here's a $5 coupon, those types of things.
You have such a vast wealth of knowledge. I love it. I love it. You can go really deep and also give us the key industry insights as well. You mentioned blogs and just knowing your array of perspectives across healthcare. How do you stay informed on what's happening in healthcare?
Well, I've worked with a lot of healthcare clients, so just being in sync with those clients, and I continue to work with healthcare clients. Listening to them is really important, and it's not just about being engaged with those clients. You have to kind of not just at a surface level go, hey, this is what I recommend to you. It's then sitting and understanding their business, and that's kind of my approach with any client that I work with. I'm going to sit down with them. I'm going to understand. I'm going to sit down with their marketing people and understand what they do as well. It can't just be surface level. Sitting down with their compliance teams. That's how I learned what I know about HIPAA as well. Sitting down with the compliance and legal teams and going, what is important to you so that we understand how we make this work for you. And it becomes a negotiation then. It's okay, this is what is important to you. This is what is important to the marketing and the digital team. How do we make these two things work? Because they obviously can't have no Google Analytics on their website. Like, they need to have some sort of data measurement, and you need to make sure you're compliant with all the legal compliance. So let's talk to each other, because they can't just say no, and you can't say no, because you know that these two things have to work together. So you have to be able to kind of be that neutral party in the middle that listens, understands, but understands the technical and the strategic side of it. So it's just understanding and having conversations with your clients and trying to absorb everything that they do.
I hope everyone had their notebooks out for that. I should have given you a heads up. You've been able to just take incredible notes. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. You're an amazing partner. We greatly value your partnership and are so honored to have you at DV22 for Healthcare.
Thanks. I love coming to these things, and I love listening to the other speakers.